Good afternoon. How are you? For those of you whom I haven't had a chance to get to meet, I'm Emeritus, Provost of the MENA program, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this session. We've listed this as a closing session for the conference, but since this is an inaugural conference for the Program of Middle East and North African Studies, or MENA program, it is also sort of an opening in a way, or a celebration of the founding of the Program of Middle East and North African Studies, in a way that seemed most appropriate to the members of the faculty in the program, given our mission as a place for scholarship, world-class scholarship, and for teaching the next generation of the students, both the undergraduates, who we've been thrilled to see it and counted every one of our sessions over the last 3 days, and our graduate students who have not only been a part of these sessions, but were involved in the program and creating the program itself, and have been consistently a part of these sessions over the last 3 days. So over the past 3 days, we have heard presentations and papers by political scientists, anthropologists, sociologists, media studies scholars, historians, legal scholars, and the topics have ranged very widely. Those of you who have been to all of the sessions have been remarking on that, as many have noted. It seems to me a barometer of where we are in the field, and where the field is going, and both some of the great leaders in the field who have inspired a generation of us or more have been here, as well as the exciting next generation of scholars who are doing work that was thrilling to hear early versions of at different points over the last few days. We've heard work, for those of you who are just joining us or have only heard parts of the conference, we've heard new work that ranged from topics from refugee camps of the Western Sahara to individual streets in the old city of Jerusalem, papers that ranged in location from the Gulf states to North Africa, and from Iran to South Asia, and frequently in papers that show the transnational connections and roots between those places, which was brilliant as well. And there's been a deep concern for historical antecedents, and not only by the historians, but in Judith Tucker's fabulous piece on piracy in the last session that brought us back to the 16th century and some of its references, to papers that brought us to the very most current work that's showing up online as we speak, so to speak. And there's been topics such as sovereignty and migrancy, oil, mercenaries, naked bloggers, and refugees, laborers, teenage girls, sultans, the poor, and laborers. It's been really exhilarating to sit here with you. Well, not sit here, we've been in 3 different rooms over the 3 days, so for our visitors, it's been a little bit of a tour of some of the nice rooms of Northwestern, so thank you for migrating along with us. But it's been really thrilling to listen to all this work and to try to take it in both the topics and knowledge that it's producing and sharing with us, and also the reach and ambition of the interdisciplinary project that is Middle East and North African Studies. This conference was organized, as many of you noted, and as Jessica Linzer commented earlier today in one of the sessions, we've been thrilled at how the participants really took seriously the organizing theme. It doesn't often happen that you come up with a theme and so many people, 18 of you, address it so directly and in such interesting ways. So we're going to thank you, I'll thank you again in a moment, but for taking that seriously. And the theme of the conference was theorizing transformations, and transformation itself in the region, which of course is, as we know already coming into it, whatever your point of access has been undergoing enormous transformation recently, but as so many showed, that this is the way the idea of transformation reaches across time and space much more profoundly than you notice when we first wrote to you, it said theorizing current transformations, and then we pulled the current out because of the work that we were seeing in the descriptions of what you were planning to do, and that, of course, thrilled us. The field of Middle East and North African Studies itself, of course, is in transformation, and it is an especially exciting time for the field, and has been for the last decade at least, to see the ways in which scholarship and the next generation, or now 2 generations, have really been transforming the field. What I called in my welcoming remarks on Wednesday, or what I referred to on Wednesday in the welcoming remarks, was our attempt here to create an area studies program after the well-noted critique of area studies has drawn, and I think I share this with my colleagues here in MENA faculty and graduate students, a lot of inspiration to see what that might mean in practice. I mean, it may sound good as a line, but to see what you all are doing really does help us show what that next, what a post-area studies might look like. So I thank you for that work and for sharing it with us. And also, and the graduate students know because I obsess about this, I'm obsessed with methodology, to look at the ways in which the scholars here grappled with and shared with us the challenges and the solutions they came up with to the challenges of methodological or how to deliver truths via their various disciplinary approaches was itself thrilling from an intellectual standpoint. I say it's a closing session, but you know if you have a program, and if you don't, please get one, that tomorrow we actually have a little bit more. It's especially, we have a workshop on methodology that will have the participation of any of the speakers who we can persuade to stay, but especially Marwan Praidi and Paul Silverstein have committed to lead that workshop tomorrow. It's geared especially to graduate students and undergraduate students and young scholars in the field and anyone who wants to think about the work that they're doing and the approaches and methodologies that can deliver, let's call it truths, from various disciplinary angles. So that's tomorrow morning. Details are in the program. And it really shows that we've been both interested in this kind of range of disciplines and approaches, but also how you might do it as a scholar, young scholar, upcoming scholar yourself. So I really hope that the students in particular will make a real effort to be there as well. So this is the time for thank yous, of course. There's been a lot of thank yous. I want to thank the conference committee of my colleagues in MENA, especially Jessica Winiger, who actually it was last spring when we both harangued each other into doing this and thought about it for the first time, who co-chaired the committee with me, and Catherine Hoffman of the Anthropology Department, Wendy Perlman of Political Science in MENA, and Mona Arabi, who's here, are both doing great work herself as an example of the next generation of MENA scholars who's an advanced graduate student in political science and the former co-chair of the MENA graduate group. That was the committee, and all of the members of the MENA faculty who really participated in suggesting speakers, discussing with us who might be good to bring here when we had the ambitions to do this conference. I want to thank the participants. You know, normally you say thanks, thanks to you. Well, you guys not only shared work with us and did a lot of interviews. I noticed with student journalists. That's the nice thing about coming to Northwestern. A lot of undergraduates are doing journalist projects for their classes, and they do interviews and videotapes, and I saw the generosity with which you greeted them on many occasions. But also for traveling here. Several of you flew in from overseas. Some of you shortened your own research trips abroad to come here. A couple people referred to their jet lag up here to defend themselves, but they were incredibly exuberant at the same time. So thank you for doing that and sharing your work with us. Now, especially to thank the MENA staff. You guys have thanked them if you were behind the scenes as an invited guest. But Lexi Gore and especially Tim Garrett have been absolutely amazing. I mean, the fact that 18 speakers in 3 different rooms with how many different meals from several different continents, and it all seemed to go very smoothly. You might have seen Tim and myself texting to each other, where is the water, or where is so-and-so, but it's really gone off without a hitch. And Tim, you're standing in the back. I want to just take a moment to do a huge round of applause for Tim. Many people have remarked to me what a treasure it is for the program to have him helping us, and I really underline that, and thank you, and thank him for that. Of course, none of this would have been possible. We wouldn't have had the idea to put on something as ambitious as this conference without the suggestion and support of Moulay Hisham and the Moulay Hisham Foundation for not only generously funding this conference, but also encouraging us to imagine celebrating and kind of kicking off this now established program with the conference of this major academic conference of this scale. So I want to thank Moulay Hisham. He's going to address you in a moment. He'll be introduced individually in a moment, but I want to thank him and the Moulay Hisham Foundation for the support for this conference. Now I'm going to turn it over now to the 2 gentlemen listed in the program, but these 2 men who will speak next deserve thank yous of a different scale from the MENA program and all of us who have been attached to it. In 2006, Dan Linzer, who was then the Dean of Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, and since 2007 has been the Provost of Northwestern, signaled his intention to build in the area of Middle East studies, where historically, for reasons that I've always found very interesting, we had not built at that point. And he charged a committee that Carl Petrie chaired back then, and that I and a couple others of us sat on back then, to look into what that might mean to build in this area with that kind of directive. We appreciated then, as we appreciate ever since, not only the inspiration to do that, but also the freedom, the academic freedom, to allow the faculty to suggest ways in what it might mean to develop in a field, as opposed to a directive from above. And that has been, I think, consistently shared by the faculty that we brought here, many of whom are in the room right now, and Perlman, Jessica Winiger, Henri Lozier, Itak Yesmaulu, and Rebecca Johnson, who were brought in under that initiative, but also the sense of support for what it might mean to build in an area that's interdisciplinary, but also based in the rigors of area studies approach. Henry Bienen, who was then the president of Northwestern and now is the president Emeritus, which sounds like a promotion actually, was behind the support, who supported that initiative in ways both visible and invisible to us, with a magnitude really beyond what I think we imagined. I remember Carl and I discussing how much support do you think they really mean to give?
We get 2 lines.
Yeah, Carl kept saying, I think 1 or 2. I said, 6 or 7, let's go. And really the response from when the administration gives you that open invitation to think about what it means to grow, and then you pick your most ambitious response, and the administration says, okay, let's do it. That really has been remarkable. I've told that story in private many times, but I want to thank both Dan Linzer and Henry Bienen on my behalf and on behalf of all of us who are here for that support and the continuing support. You notice we're doing several job searches this year. We hope to be that much bigger, and we have I feel like we're at a turning point that we've now really consolidated what we've got here, and now we're ready for the next big push. And we're thrilled to be here doing this, and we welcome all of you here, and we hope that you'll continue to be a part of what we're doing here. So with that, I want to turn over the microphone to Dan Linzer, Northwestern's Provost.
Brian touched on this theme of what began about a decade ago. I thought I would expand on it a bit. The notion of theorizing transformations had some very practical implications for us here at Northwestern, because you can't theorize if you don't have a group of people to do that. And how do you assemble a group to teach and study about the Middle East was something that was not obvious we should undertake at that time. Some of you may recall that there were peer institutions that were erupting in debates about what should be taught and who should be given tenure, and this was a difficult topic to be exploring at a university. And as dean, I was listening to the needs of students, what they wanted to learn and study and pursue, and the interests of faculty in developing areas that they thought were important. But it was really Henry Bienen who triggered all this by calling me over to his office and saying that he came here to Northwestern from being the dean of the Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton with what he thought was a mandate from the university to make Northwestern more of a global institution. And you cannot be a serious global institution without having a serious program that looks at the challenges of the Middle East. And said, get off your butt and do something about it. So I went back and I said, Carl, get off your butt and do something about it. It was important to assemble a group of faculty to let me know what were successful programs doing around the country. What did they look like? How were they structured? Where were the faculty in those, in the departmental kind of structures that we've built? But how do you get them to work together across fields to create a real vibrant program on the Middle East? And I have to thank you, Carl. You took that on and put together a report that each year we have planning meetings. And as dean, I went and presented to the then Provost Larry Dumas and to Henry, and I talked about this proposal in particular. And normally you go through that whole planning process, you wait a few months, you get a letter back that says, here are things that we're going to help you do and new resources. But at that very meeting, finishing up with the report that Carl shared on that committee, Henry's response was, do it and do it now. Let's launch the searches this spring. Don't wait until the fall. It's too important. That really set us on a path, not only to today, to have this wonderful group of Middle East and North Africa scholars and putting on this conference and being a place where other scholars from around the country and around the world say it is worth their time to come and visit and participate. And I thank all of you for doing that. But it also was a tipping point in moving Northwestern to being a more global institution. At the same time, we were just really building up what was the Center for International and Comparative Studies, a mini Woodrow Wilson School that Henry was trying to nurture with support from Bertie Buffett, and it turned into the Buffett Center. And as you know, earlier this calendar year, we celebrated with Bertie and her older brother Warren her gift to transform the Buffett Center into the Buffett Institute, and to expand even more what we can do in many areas, including Turkish studies and African studies and areas that connect closely, if are not within MENA. It's a little hard to define the boundaries. They move around a bit. It's an exciting time for us to see that this initiative has created this much activity and excitement, and it is all due, I think, to the vision and leadership of the person who will introduce our speaker, Henry Bienen.
He says these nice things about me because I appointed him provost before I left. It was a wise choice. Well, my main and pleasant job is to introduce Prince Mullah Hisham, but before I do that, I do want to reflect myself a little bit on some of the things that Brian and Dan have just talked about, because you could say, well, what took us so long to move forward on the Middle East? That is to say, not once we got going. And it really was a complicated business, and I think part of what gave a boost to what we eventually did was setting up a campus in Qatar. And in fact, I was curious to hear my old friend Miriam Lowy talk about things there. I knew Miriam from Princeton days. And that helped because it, in the end, provided us with 5 chairs on the Middle East, and also the Crown family stepped up eventually, and we then really had the wherewithal to expand what we were doing on the Middle East. We had always had a strong African program, and as Richard has said a couple of times from the floor, these artificial boundaries, and I see them, by the way, as artificial also. I agree with what you said. I've never seen the Sahara somehow as a break between North Africa and Africa south of the Sahara. There's always been, it's a place where people traded goods, people, ideas across the Sahara, and of course we had started a program earlier here on Islam in Africa, and when we did that, we didn't mean Islam in Africa south of the Sahara or Islam north of the Sahara and north. We meant Africa. For me, I always saw it as important to think about broader context of Islam in both Africa and the Middle East and Central Asia. And that brings me to, before I come to that with Mullah Hisham, I do also want to thank the conference organizers. I've been here all day today, it's nice to somehow get back into areas of study and interest rather than do all the other things that presidents and ex-presidents of universities spend all their time doing, which means getting on school boards where the mayor sticks you, mayor of Chicago, not the mayor of Linzer. Not a reputation enhancing job. As Chicagoans know. And some of the other things that you do for good or ill when you're in my position. But I really also want to thank Brian and his colleagues for having been given some resources, really being ambitious about what we all hoped would happen. And I would say I've been more than gratified by what MENA has turned into, both my time with Dan and President Shapiro, expanding it and creating a really vibrant center under Brian's leadership. And it's also been mentioned by the Provost, the Buffett Institute, Turkish Studies, which the Cayman family helped us, and I welcome our new director of that program. I think it's really an area where we can now be one of the great universities doing work, teaching, and study on North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. So this brings me to Prince Moulay Hisham. I want to welcome him, and to Malika Ben Abulawi for being with us. We've known each other a long time, and I want to go back to that long time because Moulay Hisham was a student at Princeton when I was a faculty member, and we have a mutual friend and colleague, Richard Falk, who introduced us to each other. And I was reminding Moulay Hisham at breakfast this morning that what became his trans-regional center for the study of North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, we had discussed at Princeton, and he looked a bit puzzled, so maybe I have it wrong, but I actually recall a conference that was on self-determination in Liechtenstein, where we sat around late at night, sort of going over ideas for what might happen at Princeton, and through his generosity, that center was established and was run out of Princeton by Abdullah Hamoudi, and I think has been very, very successful. So from time to time, we've seen each other over the years, and I'm not going to recite all of Moulay Hisham's biography. You have it in your brochure, but I want to just pull out what I think is really interesting about this biography. I think most people would agree today that Moulay Hisham is one of the most interesting intellectuals, I might say political intellectuals, to emerge in the contemporary Middle East and North Africa. He's continually thinking about things and going back to school. There aren't too many princes these days that wind up in Oxford doing studies after a period of Princeton, Stanford. He goes to very good places, mind you, and we hope that he'll be spending more time here at Northwestern. But he's really emerged as a major voice calling for political reform in the Arab and more broadly the Islamic world. As I mentioned, at Princeton he endowed the Institute for the Trans-Regional Study of the Contemporary Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia, and his foundation, now up there on the board, the Moulay Hisham Foundation, has created the program on Arab reform and democracy at Stanford, Climate Change and Democracy Project at UC Santa Barbara, and he's also established work in France on and government and local development at Yale, and the foundation has produced A Whisper to a Roar, the award-winning documentary on authoritarian regimes around the world. I have sitting on my desk a new book, relatively new, by Moulay Hisham, which Brian, because my French is so poor, translates for me as Diary of an Outcast Prince. I'm waiting for the English language version, which you tell me that is coming sooner or later. I gather there's an Arabic version. I would do even worse with that than I would do with the French version. And so I hope to get to that book when I can read it myself. So really, he's been a really interesting figure in the contemporary world, with his essays published internationally, French journals, in El País, in the New York Times, Journal of Democracy, and he has served in the past as a principal officer for community affairs with the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission in Kosovo. In 2000, he's worked with the Carter Center, and he's worked on issues of human rights with Human Rights Watch. He's served as a consulting professor at the Center for Democracy and Development of the Rule of Law at Stanford. So this is a person who, though very high up in the line for the kingship of Morocco, hasn't been a normal prince, I would say, but rather someone deeply engaged in contemporary affairs with very clearly and deeply held values for a better and more liberal world, for peace, for human rights. And we should applaud him, not just for his generosity today in helping us with this important conference, but really for the impact that he has made in contemporary life of North Africa and the Middle East. And I want to do that very much.